Welcome to Honest HR, the podcast for informed and aspiring HR professionals intent on transforming workplace challenges into golden opportunities.
Every week, we chat with industry experts to bring you insights, trends, and actionable advice through relatable stories from the real world of HR.
Honest HR is a SHRM podcast, and by listening, you're helping to build a more engaged workforce and drive organizational success. I'm Wendy Fong.
I'm Amber Clayton.
And I'm Monique Akanbi. Now, let's get honest. Hello, and welcome back to Honest HR. I'm your host, Monique Akanbi, Membership Initiatives Director with SHRM. And I am super excited about today's episode. We have none other than a dear friend of mine, Tony Moore. And we're going to talk about a topic that we're going to ask $1 million question, actually, a topic that is really important. And Tony's going to share just some really key tips around what does it mean to be a good boss? So, in recognition of National Boss Day, we're going to ask that $1 million question. What is a good boss? And so, if I think back to my own personal experiences, I can tell you very distinct qualities in some of the bosses that I had that will qualify them as a good boss. So, during our time together, we're going to identify what are those qualities, from communication to trust to even our results and outcomes and building a team. And so, welcome to Honest HR, Tony.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here. It's good to see you
Yes.
in all your glory doing this thing you do now.
Yes. Thank you. So for our audience, there is a phrase that I learned from Tony years ago when we met, and it is, that's cool.
That's
so
cool.
We're going to make sure that we embed that into our conversation together. But for our audience who does not know who Tony Moore is, tell us, who is Tony Moore?
Wow. So, well, I am the culture architect. When I started our business about 8 years ago, that was the title I came up with. And it was mainly because I knew that my focus was going to be on organizational culture in some fashion. And so basically our company, the simplest way to think of it is our company helps leaders get out of the weeds. So, and that is our main focus. How do we help you get out of the weeds, accelerate your leadership maturity, and create this culture of radical ownership on your team? And then we do that from the stage. We do that in some one-on-one coaching. We do that in some of our roundtables. And then, of course, we do quite a bit of deep dive culture work with organizations and with teams.
So that works hand in hand in terms of being a culture architect, and then also along the topic that we're going to talk about today, which is what makes a good boss. So my very first question, I'm just going to dive right in, is, in your opinion, what is the difference between a good boss and a good leader?
Yeah, a good boss and a good leader. Interestingly enough, obviously, I think that I know it's national, where this is in celebration of National Bosses Day, but there's a lot of resistance to the word boss, mainly because of the way it sounds. But I would answer your question by saying you can't be a good boss without being a good leader. So you'd have to be a good leader in order to be considered a good boss, as far as I'm concerned. So I think that's what, there is no differentiation between the two. You either are or you aren't.
Yeah. I want to dig into that a little deeper and kind of take the approach of what makes a good leader. And then also, as you become a good leader, then what qualifies you then for that boss title? Or is there such thing that qualifies you once you've become a good leader? So what's a good leader?
So let me go the other direction and then I'll answer your question. So I would say that a good boss is the person who on Bosses Day gives gifts to their staff. That would be a good boss. It's Bosses Day, so I want you to see me doing good things as your boss. So I think so if you take that, I would say then a good leader is the person who is continually on the lookout for it to ensure that the members of their team have everything they need to be wildly successful. And they spend a good amount of their time blocking and tackling and getting obstacles out of the pathway of the people that they lead. So I think if you do that, people won't have any problem seeing you as their boss.
That's a great way to put it, and it actually makes me think then being a boss is more of modeling the behavior of a leader.
Absolutely.
That's it. That
Absolutely.
that popped in my mind when you
That's
said,
good.
"On boss
Yeah.
day, I'm giving gifts," right? So I
Yes.
immediately thought modeling the behavior
Yes.
of a leader.
Yes.
Got it.
Absolutely.
I love
Yeah.
that. I love that. Now, what would you say are some of those key qualities? And we're going to use boss and leader interchangeably for this
That sounds good.
conversation. So
That's good.
what would you say are key qualities?
So key qualities of a good boss or a good leader, however you frame it. I think there's a couple of things for me that come to mind. Number one, it is someone who is fully invested in ensuring that their teams are successful. So they understand that it's not about me, the leader, but it's about this group of people that I lead. I was just at a conference in Alabama this past week. And one of the things we talked about in our breakout session was that you want to be a leader that people follow by choice, not a leader that people follow because you hold a title. And so how do I create an environment where people want to be a part of what we're doing? They want to be a part of where we're going. And I think those are the qualities of a good boss. So they have that ability to not just to be inspirational. Obviously that can be helpful, but it's just being the kind of person that people want to be on, to use the good to great phrase, they want to be on the bus with you. And they don't really care where the bus is going as long as you're on the bus with them. So I think that's when I think about the qualities of a good boss, so that person who's able to create that kind of an environment for their team. I also think right along the same lines is they do truly care about the people that they lead. So they care about them as human beings, not simply as people that are on the team. I always felt like the greatest compliment I could ever get as a boss would be for someone's spouse to say to me, I don't know what you all are doing at work, but he or she is a better person at home than they used to be, which means that I've fundamentally impacted who they are as a person and not just the work that they do on our team.
That's powerful. That is really powerful. And it speaks to the whole person approach, right? Not just the employee, right? Not just because of the outcome or the output based on the work that they perform, but I'm really here to treat the whole employee, like the whole person. I love that. And with that comes a level of emotional intelligence. And thinking of that, what would you say from an emotional intelligence standpoint? How do good bosses lead, or what's the importance of emotional intelligence in leadership or being a good boss?
Yeah, that's a loaded one, but I will say that it's deeply important. But I think to kind of sum it up, there's this self-awareness that is necessary in order for me to be a good boss. Um, Unfortunately, though, the way I see myself in the mirror may not be the way other people are experiencing me. So, a good boss or someone who wants to be a good boss has also created not only the culture, but created a mechanism for people to be able to give them feedback about the way in which they're experiencing them as a boss. So, I personally tried to make it a regular occurrence during my coaching sessions to ensure that at some point in time, part of our focus was going to be on how am I doing with you? And one of the ways that I did that was to use, you probably have heard me talk about it from the stage, is that start, stop, and continue. I'd ask them to, before they come to that meeting, to send me in writing, I would like Tony to start, fill in the blank. I would like Tony to stop, fill in the blank. I would like Tony to continue, fill in the blank. And then I could review that and we could get together and talk so that I could understand how I'm actually impacting them as a leader. And that will help you that'll help increase some of your self-awareness because now I know how I'm actually impacting you.
Well, I am going to share in the moment. A few years ago, when you shared start, stop, and continue with me, I implemented that as I was leading a team. And
Mm.
that was very powerful, right? Because we see
Wow.
ourselves in
Yeah.
one way. I am very much of a person that is go, go, go. Let's conquer
Yeah.
the world.
Yes.
And I wasn't aware in the moment that I need to pause. My team
Mhm.
needs to pause and I need to
Yes.
pause as well. And that was feedback I
Wow.
received. And so I just wanted to
Wow.
thank you for sharing
I
even that
love it.
tool of start,
Yeah.
stop, and continue. And I think that may have been 5 or 6 years ago that you shared
Wow.
that with me.
Yes. Yes.
And that was a very powerful tool, especially
Oh,
around along the realm of emotional intelligence.
thank you for
Um,
that.
so, Tony, what is the best piece of advice
Mm.
that either you received from a boss or a mentor about leadership?
Yeah. So, man, a lot. I've been blessed with some really good mentors
Mhm.
over the years in the workplace, people who saw things in me that I didn't see in myself. But a couple of things come to mind immediately. One of them I say all the time, and that is surround yourself with people who will tell you when you have broccoli in your teeth, because that's what you need. You need people around you who are going to tell you the truth, because otherwise people are going to just do what you want to do. And the reality is you're frequently wrong. As my wife would say, I'm frequently wrong, but rarely uncertain. And that's a true statement. So having people around me who will point out when I'm off or when they disagree is important. And then I think the second advice I got that was just really, really helpful, and I said it a little bit earlier, and that is they just made it clear that leadership wasn't about me, that this is really not about you. All of the growth and development and training and all of that is so you can have a positive impact on the people that you're leading. It is not so you can be celebrated as a leader. It is
Mm.
about bringing that team along. And that was really, really good advice for someone who, like you said earlier, for myself, I'm a go getter. I've got a high drive for results. I'm low patience. I just want to go, 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 go. So knowing that I needed to concentrate on what everyone else needed and not just what I needed
Yeah.
was really, really good advice for me as a leader.
Awesome. That's really good. And as you were talking, it made me think of a story you shared from one of your keynotes years ago. And I think that it is relevant to this topic today. And so I'm just going to ask you to share the story, if you can recall, around you going off to school and your mom writing you a note.
Oh, wow.
I'm
Wow.
pulling from the archives.
Yeah. And I don't, and it's a personal story. So I remember it. That's
Yes.
good. Wow.
Well,
So,
it resonated with me, and it
yeah.
is something that I took just
Yeah.
in being a leader. It was just advice that your mom
Mhm.
gave you, different situation, but something
Mhm.
that could be applied to being a leader, and it just helped me. So I would be selfish if I did not ask you to share that with our
Well, I
audience.
will share it. And for those of you who know what the Reader's Digest is, I'll give you the Reader's Digest version. But I would just say that I was a freshman in college, and I was one evening, my roommate and I went out for some pizza. And when we left the pizza place to walk back to campus, it was after dark, and we were heading back, and we were standing at a corner, and this car came up to the intersection, motioned for us to enter into the intersection to cross the street. And when we did, the driver of the car hit his gas pedal, and his car hit my roommate, knocked him to the ground, and the car, and along with its occupants, they sped off and they were yelling racial epithets at us. And so we got back to campus, obviously shaken, angry, all the various emotions. All of our friends wanted to load up in the car and let's go handle our business. Thank God, um, cooler heads prevailed. But I was sharing that story that night with my mother, and she initially was pretty quiet, and then she began to remind me of things that she tried to teach me about the world and about things I would encounter and all of that. And about a week later, or a few days later, I received a letter in the mail from her. And the letter, it literally just had these words written on the piece of paper: "A smooth sea never made a skillful sailor." And, I get emotional just thinking about it, but I will tell you, it has served me so well throughout my life that everything that happens has the ability or the potential to make me a better father, a better husband, a better friend, a better leader. It all depends on how I respond to the thing that actually happens to me. And so I have used that over and over again in my over the course of my leadership. So a smooth sea never made a skillful sailor. And thank you for letting me bring my mom into this conversation.
A
Yes.
wise woman, but the reason why I think that that is important, because we're talking about being a good boss. But in being a good boss, it does not mean, or being a good leader does not mean that you're not going to encounter those rough seas.
Yes.
It
Yes. There's
doesn't
enough.
mean you're going to encounter those obstacles. I really thought that
Yes.
that was just,
Yes.
I carry that with me. And so, yes.
Yes. And actually, you are. I often say that leadership and discomfort are inseparable. If you're not having periods of discomfort, you probably aren't leading. I mean, there's just no way to do that work and not have periods of discomfort. And so understanding and accepting that as a reality can help you navigate those rough seas when they come up.
Yeah, I carry that close to me, on my leadership journey. So thank you for indulging me and sharing with our audience that story. What do you think are common mistakes bad bosses or bad leaders make outside of it being self-serving? Because what I hear from you is that being a good leader or being a good boss, it is not about you. But what are some other common mistakes?
Yeah, I think one of the ones that I see a lot that is very, very common, and that is we use words, but we don't define the behaviors that exhibit the words.
Oh,
So we may
okay.
say, hey, I need my vice presidents to be more strategic. And then I'll say, so what would they be doing that would tell you they're more strategic? And you can't tell me. Well, if you can't tell me what more strategic looks like on a day to day basis, how are they ever going to learn to do the thing that you want them to do? So we use these words, but we don't always get down to what are the behaviors that actually demonstrate those particular words.
Right. So what does that look like? So
Yes, yes. What does the conversation look like?
yes, what does that conversation look like?
Yeah, so I literally the way I just said it. So oftentimes I'm talking to the CEO or someone at the vice president, senior vice president level is who's contacted us about doing some work with a team or with their organization. And they usually I always want to know from them, what is it that they are, what are the outcomes that they're looking for? What are the problems that are going on that made you call? What I find is that most of the time what they're describing are symptoms. So they're symptoms, they're not the actual problem. So they'll say, we have silos. Well, silos are a symptom of a problem that creates another problem, but it's a symptom of a problem. And if we don't diagnose if we don't accurately diagnose the root cause, our intervention is not going to work. So as we talk about, as an example, those silos, that usually leads to the conversation around they're too myopic, they don't think largely enough. And I say, so give me some examples of what thinking large looks like. So if I were working for you and you said, Tony, I need you to be more strategic, or I need you to think bigger, give me an example of what it looks like when I'm doing it and what it looks like when I'm not doing it. Because in order for me to get better at the thing you want me to do, I need to know what the behaviors are that are leading to you believing that, which is why I would always ask them, how would you know? How would you know if I don't think that my leaders collaborate enough? How would you know if they were collaborating? What are you using that's telling you that they're not collaborating? Because whatever that is, that may be related to collaboration, or it could be related to something else. And we don't want to do a class on collaboration when you actually have relationship issues. If the reason they don't collaborate is because they don't get along, me doing a class on how to collaborate is not going to help them. Matter of fact, it's only going to mask the actual root cause, which is the problem within the relationship. So is that helpful?
That is very helpful,
Yeah.
and I take that. I wasn't expecting you to take that angle, but I mean, that was really helpful even for even for me, just in terms of in thinking of mistakes that are made, and it's words that are used, but there's not the demonstration or even just kind of like the articulation of the
Mhm.
action
Yes. Yes.
behind the words that are used.
Yes.
And if I think about mistakes that not so good leaders make, I would have never made that connection. But that is
Yeah.
very, very, very powerful. Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing that.
You're
Yeah.
welcome.
For those that are looking to be a good leader, what is maybe one skill or mindset? And I know that that will be tough, but one skill or mindset or shift you would recommend that they focus on?
Yeah, you're right. There's so many things that, and depending on where they are in leadership, right, and where they are and what level they're at, where they need to focus. But I I'm gonna sound like a broken record, but I think in many ways it still comes back to you continually asking yourself, how can I deepen my impact on the people that I'm leading? And only the people I'm leading can tell me how to do that. So if at the end of the day, I need to know how to best lead Monique. I need to know how to best lead Andra. I need to know how to best lead anyone I'm leading. And that may be different from person to person, but I need to actually have a conversation with them about really what works for them, which is like one of the reasons I always ask a new employee when we were interviewing for sure, but then really get into the details when they join the team is the last time you had a boss that you were working for and you were just wildly successful, what was it about them that really helped you? Because when you answer that question for me, that tells me what's important to you. And I can begin to figure out how can I deliver that same result with you? What was it about them and the follow-up questions so that I understand why it's important to you? And then I want to determine how to best do that with you. So I think wherever you are in leadership, have conversations with the individual members of your team and understand how to best lead them. Would be the best thing that you could do.
Yeah. What I gather from this conversation is I think in being leaders and managers or however we define ourselves in our own respective spaces, rather than focusing on the work or the process, focus on the people that will then result in the work or the process being done. And so again, I know we preach this all the time, but at the core it is about the people. If I were to just kind of sum up what you shared, it is if you focus on the person or focus on the people or focus on the team, everything else will eventually fall into place.
Yes. Yes. And that is so true. That all assume that, but understanding that I just posted something on LinkedIn earlier today that for all of your work on being transparent and honest and all of these great leadership qualities, you still have to deliver the goods. So at the end of the day, you still have to deliver. And sometimes you don't have the right person in the right seat. Sometimes you don't have the right person on the right bus. So sometimes there's difficult conversations that have to be held because this just is not the right place for this person to be. So there's an expectation that everyone on that team is going to deliver the goods, but I'd rather build the relationship and let that lead to the delivery of the goods versus focusing only on delivering the goods.
Yeah, that's really good. Oh my gosh, this is so good. Tony, I could sit here and talk to you forever.
Yeah, you too. I could talk to you forever.
But with that, we are going to start wrapping up today's episode. But I do want to give space and an opportunity in recognition of this topic. Is there anything else you want to share with our audience?
Yeah, I think that what I would say is if you're currently in a leadership position or you desire to be in a leadership position, count it as a sacred trust. Count it as something that you're literally asking people to follow you, to be a part of something that you're trying to build or you're trying to create. And therefore, you want to do everything you can to rally them around what it is that you're trying to do and not let it be a situation where they're doing it simply because you're making them do it. Now, I ended up here in Florida because I joined a CEO who I had worked for 5 times in the past during turnarounds. I mean, that's what brought me here. And the fact that he said to me, you're going to be the most hated person in our organization for a while because of all the changes we have to do. I need you to understand that. How do you feel about it? This is exactly what I said to him. Are you going to stay? And he said, yes. I said, then let's get in that foxhole and go to work because I want to work with you, and where we do the work, it's irrelevant. I just want to be with you with whatever you're trying to do. So.
Wow. Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. Tony, thank you so much for being our guest today. If you haven't already, subscribe and follow Honest HR, however you listen to our podcast. Also, to our audience, reviews have a real impact on the podcast visibility. So if you enjoyed today's podcast, leave a review and help others find Honest HR. Feel free to reach out on me on social media. I am Monique Akanbi on all social media channels. And also subscribe where you can reach our podcast if you go to SHRM.org/HR Daily. Thanks again for joining us on Honest HR.
This podcast is approved to provide 0.5 professional development credits or PDC towards SHRM CP and SHRM SCP recertification. Enter this PDC activity ID into your SHRM activity portal to claim your credit, 25-HGGQP. Once more, that code is 25-HGGQP. Please note that this code will expire October 17th, 2025.